His family was shaken when the mother disappeared. Suddenly she was lost and never returned, forcing the husband to take care of the family on his own. He never found out what happened to the mother, not even after 23 years when the husband went on vacation and made a shocking discovery. The mother never returned home, and after 23 years, her family discovers the reason. It was finally time for the last child to leave home. Now all the children were studying in college. Henry thought it was time to enjoy a nice vacation. He deserved this vacation more than ever, because the past 23 years of his life had been anything but a walk in the park. 23 years ago, his wife suddenly disappeared, which forced Henry to take care of the family on his own. It took some time for the family to learn how to live without their mother, and they also wondered what had happened. No one expected that Henry would be the one to discover the truth behind her disappearance. Shortly after saying goodbye to his youngest son, who went off to college, he felt that he deserved a break. Since his wife disappeared, he had spent all his time and effort raising his 5 children, so a vacation was a luxury Henry couldn't afford before. He was always worried that the children wouldn't be okay without their mother. While packing his things, he sat on the bed for a moment. Next to him, on the bedside table, there was an old photo of him and his wife, Lucy. He still missed her so much and asked himself the same desperate question every day: will I ever see you again? He muttered. Since Lucy disappeared, Henry couldn't be with another woman. She was the only one for him. He remembered that day in December as if it were yesterday, the day he lost his soulmate. She would usually greet him when she came home and they would talk about their day, but this time there was only silence. He remembered the children playing happily, unaware that their mother was gone. Then the sound of a taxi horn snapped him out of his daydream. Henry shouted as he grabbed his luggage and walked toward the front door. It was time for that well-deserved vacation. Finally, some rest. Henry muttered, or at least that's what he thought. His destination was Lake Como in Italy, his favorite place in the world, because he used to visit it every year with dear Lucy. But this time it was different, very different. It had been 23 years since he last saw this place, and now he was going without Lucy. During the trip, Henry's thoughts kept returning to his wife and her disappearance. Henry immediately felt that something was wrong, so he called the police. But after 3 days, they couldn't find her. He would never forget the face of the police officer who told him they had stopped the search. From the airplane window, he saw Lake Como below him. What a special place, with high mountain peaks surrounding the crystal blue waters. The scene took him back to all the beautiful times he had spent there, unaware that something would be different this time, and that those memories would confront him. When he got off the plane and set foot on Italian soil, he felt the warmth of the sun on his face and the fresh mountain air filling his lungs. The scene that greeted him was absolutely enchanting, and it struck him with a wave of nostalgia. Was it the right decision to come here? Memories of those happy times flooded his mind, bringing sadness to his heart. This was a traditional experience for him and his wife, but that experience was taken away from him. How can he enjoy this holiday without her? Unaware that this holiday would change his life in ways he never expected. The taxi moved through the narrow roads leading to Lake Como. Wow. Henry muttered. Almost nothing has changed in the past 23 years. Small towns are scattered along the shore, each one more charming than the last, and the air is filled with a familiar scent. Do you remember all these years? The scent remained in his memory. Was he able to recognize something like that after all this time? Henry shrugged his shoulders as he watched the buildings disappear into the distance. It wasn't long before the taxi stopped and they arrived at his destination. He shook the thoughts from his head and got out, ready to relax. Henry paid and thanked the driver, then entered the beautiful lake house. Henry didn't know what he wanted to do when he got here. Lucy always planned their vacations, and he had never gone alone before, so he decided to go somewhere nearby, unaware of the importance of this decision. Before going to bed, Henry took a quick look at the map. His cabin was somewhat far away, but a big city was nearby. Verena read aloud. This would be his first activity on vacation, exploring Verena. He couldn't remember if he had been there before, but he would find out soon. From the moment Henry set foot in the city, memories flooded his mind. This was the place where he wandered with Lucy. The young couple couldn't keep their hands off each other. While he was daydreaming, he walked down a narrow alley toward the center. Suddenly, Henry felt a deep fear. A sudden scent reached his nose, the same scent he had recognized before while in the taxi. Was he mistaken? Or did he know this scent very well? It really felt as if he was in some kind of trance. What was that scent? Again? It was very specific. Henry's mind was racing. He didn't care if it seemed. How much? Henry's thoughts were frantic, unconcerned if he appeared addicted. He was finally allowed to enjoy his addiction again. He lifted his nose in the air and inhaled. Where did that come from? He moved frantically, trying to identify the source. His nose led him to a small neighborhood with several open windows. Aha! He exclaimed happily. As he got closer, it was clear the smell was coming from one of them. But which one? As he reached the spot, he suddenly realized what the smell was. No, it can't be. He shook his head violently. The thought that crossed his mind was impossible. It couldn't be real. That smell was exactly like Lucy's apple pie. The memory brought tears to his eyes, but also a slight smile. What a coincidence this was. But was it really? As quickly as the smile appeared, it vanished again. Suddenly he realized something. Lucy's apple pie was truly unique. It was a family recipe passed down through generations, and the smell was very distinctive. Because of her special herbs. And those herbs were sold in a specific shop in Mexico. Lucy once told him that her great-grandmother grew up on a plain in Mexico where these special herbs grew. The herbs created a sweet herbal scent that was very distinctive. All this information rushed through his head. What was going on? This couldn't just be a coincidence, he thought. At first, the whole idea of the vacation was for Henry to relax and enjoy some free time, but ever since he smelled the apple pie, his body felt tense and his mind was racing. He couldn't ignore it. He needed to find out what was going on. Without thinking, Henry found himself knocking on the door, surprised by his own action. He couldn't stay away. Now he heard some shuffling on the other side of the door as footsteps approached. Henry thought things would become clear soon, but what he didn't know was that his life was about to change. A young woman opened the door. Henry couldn't help but feel disappointed. A small part of him had hoped to see Lucy open that door. Opening the door sent another wave of apple pie scent in his direction. Then a small voice interrupted his thoughts. "Can I help you?" the young woman asked. Henry was so lost in his thoughts that she startled him, even though he was the one who knocked on her door in the first place. He stared at her for a moment, not knowing what to say, then decided to be honest. He explained that he was enjoying the city and wandering around the neighborhood when he suddenly smelled something wonderful. "Your pie," he said with a smile as he pointed to it, then asked her how it was made or if she used a recipe. And the answer would shock him. "I learned how to make it." "From the lady by the lake," the young woman replied happily. She was pleased that Henry liked the smell of her pie so much that he knocked on her door, but that answer was not what he expected. How could someone here know the pie recipe? "The lady by the lake," Henry quietly repeated, confirming he heard it correctly. But he was also sure that this recipe was only circulated. In Lucy's family, Lucy was an only child, and she didn't give the recipe to Henry or the children. Did she give it to someone here? He needed to know that. But when Henry asked the young woman who the lady by the lake was, or where he could find her, she hesitated. She was clearly uncomfortable giving such information to a stranger. He understood her feelings and thought of something that might convince her. Unaware of the shocking truth that would be revealed, Henry decided that the best course of action was to tell her his story. That way she would get to know him and maybe talk to him about the Lady of the Lake. But when he began telling his life story, the young woman suddenly interrupted him. "How do you know her name is Lucy?" The two of them looked at each other in shock for a moment. Henry was stunned, but he finally found his voice. "What do you mean?" he said. The young woman repeated her question and asked how he knew the lady's name was Lucy. Then everything fell into place inside Henry's head. The lady by the lake was named Lucy, and she knew how to make Lucy's pie. Henry couldn't believe what he was hearing. The young woman saw his confused and surprised look, and immediately began to tell her story. Henry noticed that the story had the effect he had hoped for. Before he finished the story, the young woman took off her apron and told him she would take him to Lake Como. She didn't want to be the person who ruined this possible meeting. Thank you so much, Henry exclaimed. Then he thought of something. Why would Lucy be here all this time? He followed the young woman to the lakeshore, wondering, why was she here? Why hadn't she called him? A small cabin appeared near the water. She lives there, the young woman said. Henry, determined to get answers, walked toward the cabin with growing tension. He couldn't believe what was happening and pinched himself to ensure he wasn't dreaming. Ah, he muttered. What would he do if he saw Lucy again after all these years? He wanted to ask her many questions, but would he like the answers? He saw a window with a curtain behind it, and there was a ghostly figure moving back and forth all the time. Then he saw the curtain move slightly from left to right. A woman slowly pushed the curtain aside, and suddenly she became visible. Henry looked directly at her, unable to believe his eyes. The woman in the window froze for a second when her eyes met Henry's, then she closed the curtain. Suddenly, Henry was stunned, stopped in his tracks, and didn't know what to do. Although he had hoped for this moment, he now realized he wasn't ready. For 23 years, Henry had thought about, dreamed about, and hoped for this moment with Lucy. At last, she was here. He still couldn't move a muscle. Then the woman appeared again. It was undeniable Lucy. He shouted. They stared at each other, both unsure of what to do. Then Henry took the initiative. He walked quickly toward the door and broke down in tears as he waited for her to open it. He was no longer in control of his emotions. He was about to be reunited with his long-lost love. But what about his children? Henry heard the lock slowly turning. Tearful Lucy opened the door, and Henry rushed into her arms. The embrace lasted nearly 5 minutes. Lucy asked if he wanted to sit down. They were both speechless as they slowly moved to the couch cushions. Henry sat down, but Lucy couldn't sit still and acted nervously, then stood up. Henry sat on the couch and looked around. He saw many pictures of a young man in his 20s. When Lucy returned, she looked at Henry with a frightened expression on her face. That was when Henry asked her the questions that had haunted his mind for 23 years. What happened? Henry noticed the blood slowly draining from her face as she became pale. She knew this question was coming, but she still feared it deeply. She opened her mouth to say something, but before any words came out, emotions overwhelmed her. She had made a terrible mistake. She finally managed to say it. Henry looked at her with concern and told her not to worry and just explain. Lucy took a deep breath and began to tell him that she had met someone during their last vacation here the night when Henry stayed in the cabin sick, and when she and Henry returned home, she was pregnant. The last thing Lucy wanted was for her family to grow with an illegitimate child, so she returned to Lake Como to raise the child with his father. But now her son lives with his father in Milan, leaving Lucy alone. "Can you forgive me?" she asked, but Henry had other plans in mind. Henry got up and sat next to Lucy. He was angry on one hand, but very happy on the other. There were many catastrophic scenarios haunting his mind throughout those years. "Come home, dear," Henry suggested. "Then we'll see how we'll deal with it further, please." Lucy couldn't believe that Henry reacted this way after what she had done to him and their children. The two hugged each other again, and Henry stayed with Lucy for a few days. Then Lucy returned home with Henry. There, they resumed their life together after being separated for 23 years. 6 months have passed since Henry and Lucy met at Lake Como. Now, the two are living in their old house again. For the children, it was strange to see their mother again. Most of them couldn't remember her at all. They were children when she disappeared. But for some, it was difficult. However, slowly but surely, things worked out. Henry and Lucy were trying to rebuild their lives. Lucy told Henry everything, and he started a new life when everything became public.